Hello everyone, and welcome back to History of the Ancient World. Today, we're journeying back in time, over 6,000 years ago, to the fertile plains between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This land, known as Mesopotamia, was the cradle of civilization, and its first great inhabitants were the Sumerians. Forget what you think you know about ancient life. The Sumerians weren't just simple farmers. They were brilliant innovators, city builders, and the architects of a society so advanced it laid the foundation for the modern world. They invented writing, created complex legal codes, and gazed at the stars with a scientific curiosity that is truly mind-blowing. So, get ready to explore the bustling streets of ancient Ur, decipher the secrets of cuneiform, and meet the people who literally wrote the first chapter of human history. Let's dive into the incredible world of the Sumerians. Imagine a landscape that was once harsh and unpredictable. The rivers flooded erratically and the sun beat down relentlessly. It was here, in this challenging environment, that the Sumerians displayed their incredible ingenuity. They didn't just survive, they thrived by mastering their surroundings. They dug intricate networks of canals and irrigation channels, turning the arid land into a lush, agricultural paradise. This mastery over water allowed them to produce surplus crops like barley and wheat, which was the key to everything that followed. With a stable food supply, not everyone had to be a farmer. People could specialize in other trades, and this division of labor sparked the birth of the world's first cities. We're talking about legendary names like Uruk, Ur, and Eridu, sprawling urban centers with populations in the tens of thousands at a time when most of the world was living in small, scattered villages. Walking through a Sumerian city would have been an awe-inspiring experience. At the heart of each city stood a massive terraced pyramid called a ziggurat. These weren't tombs like in Egypt. They were temples, believed to be the earthly dwelling places of the city's patron god or goddess. The ziggurat wasn't just a religious center. It was the hub of city life. Surrounding it were administrative buildings, workshops, and storehouses where the city's grain wealth was kept. Priests, who were also the city's first bureaucrats, managed this vast economic enterprise from the temple complex. The streets below would have been a bustling labyrinth of mud brick houses, crowded with artisans, merchants, weavers, and potters. The air would be filled with the sounds of hammers striking metal, the chatter of traders haggling in the marketplace, and the bleating of sheep being brought in from the countryside. This was urban life, invented right here in Sumer. But perhaps the Sumerians' most monumental achievement, the one that truly changed the world, was the invention of writing. As their society grew more complex, they needed a way to keep track of goods, record laws, and communicate over long distances. Their solution was cuneiform. It started as a simple system of pictographs, drawings of objects. But over centuries, it evolved into a sophisticated script of wedge-shaped marks pressed into wet clay tablets with a reed stylus. With cuneiform, the Sumerians moved from prehistory into history. For the first time, people could record their stories, their beliefs, and their knowledge for future generations. Archaeologists have unearthed hundreds of thousands of these clay tablets. They are our direct window into the Sumerian world, detailing everything from epic myths and royal decrees to beer recipes, and even student complaint letters about their difficult school lessons. Life for the average Sumerian was shaped by a clear social hierarchy. At the very top was the king, or Lugal, who was seen as the god's representative on earth. Below him were the priests and priestesses, who held immense power due to their role as intermediaries with the gods and their control over the city's economy. Then came a kind of upper class, wealthy merchants, scribes, and high-ranking military officers. The largest group, the majority of the population, were the commoners. This included farmers, fishermen, and artisans like carpenters and stonecutters. They were free citizens who owned property and could run businesses. At the very bottom of the social ladder were the enslaved people. These individuals were often prisoners of war or people who had fallen into debt. While they had some legal protections, their lives were incredibly difficult. This structured society, with its clear roles and responsibilities, was essential for keeping the large, complex cities functioning smoothly. So what did the Sumerians eat, wear, and do for fun? Their diet was based heavily on the grains they grew, especially barley. Barley was used to make bread, a staple of every meal, and also to brew beer. Sumerian beer was thick, nutritious, and a fundamental part of their diet for all social classes. They also ate dates, vegetables like onions and lentils, and fish from the rivers. For clothing, the climate dictated simplicity. Both men and women typically wore sheepskin or woolen skirts. As weaving techniques improved, they began to produce finer linen garments. And for fun, they loved music and had instruments like lyres, harps, and drums. Board games were also popular, including the famous royal game of a predecessor to backgammon that was played by everyone from kings to commoners. They told stories and recited poetry, most famously the Epic of Gilgamesh, a heroic tale of a king's quest for immortality that explores themes of friendship, loss, and the human condition. The Sumerians had a rich and complex spiritual life. They were polytheistic, meaning they worshipped many gods and goddesses. Each city had its own patron deity, but there were major gods recognized across Sumer. There was Anu, the god of the sky, Enlil, the god of wind and storms, and Enki, the clever god of water and wisdom. One of the most important was Inanna, the goddess of love, fertility, and war, a powerful and often unpredictable figure. The Sumerians believed that humans were created to serve the gods and that their own prosperity depended on keeping these powerful deities happy. They built magnificent temples, offered daily sacrifices of food and drink, and held elaborate religious festivals. They also had a rather gloomy view of the afterlife, seeing it as a shadowy, dusty place called the land of no return. This belief likely encouraged them to focus on living a full and prosperous life here on Earth. The Sumerians were also humanity's first scientists and mathematicians. Their observations of the heavens were not just for religious purposes. They were practical. They developed a calendar based on the cycles of the moon to track the seasons for farming. They charted the movements of the stars and planets, identifying constellations that we still recognize today. Their understanding of mathematics was astounding. They used a sexagesimal system, which is a base 60 system. Think about that for a second. We still use their system today for measuring time, 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, and for measuring circles with 360 degrees. They understood concepts like multiplication and division, fractions, and even quadratic equations. This mathematical prowess was essential for their massive construction projects, for surveying land, and for managing their complex temple economy. So what happened to these brilliant people? The story of Sumer is not one of sudden collapse, but of gradual absorption. Over centuries, Semitic-speaking peoples, like the Akkadians, migrated into Mesopotamia. For a time, the two cultures coexisted, but the Akkadians eventually gained political dominance. Around 2334 BC, Sargon of Akkad conquered the Sumerian city-states and created the world's first empire. Although Sumerian ceased to be a spoken language, its influence was so profound that it continued to be used as a scholarly and religious language for centuries, much like Latin in medieval Europe. The Akkadians, and later the Babylonians and Assyrians, all adopted and built upon Sumerian innovations. They worshipped Sumerian gods under different names, told Sumerian myths, and used cuneiform to write their own languages. The Sumerian legacy didn't die. It was woven into the very fabric of every subsequent Mesopotamian civilization. The Sumerians were truly pioneers of the human spirit. In a world of small hunter-gatherer bands, they dared to build cities. They created law, government, and complex economies. They gazed at the stars and tried to understand their place in the universe. And most importantly, they gave us the gift of writing, allowing their voices to echo across millennia. Every time you check the time, look at a calendar, or read a book, you are touching a piece of the incredible legacy left behind by the people of ancient Sumer. They are the silent architects of our modern world, and their story is the first essential chapter in the grand history of human civilization. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back to the dawn of history. If you enjoyed learning about the Sumerians, please give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to History of the Ancient World for more deep dives into the civilizations that shaped our past. Let me know in the comments which ancient culture you'd like to explore next. Until then, stay curious.